to the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside hot as heck Louisville, Kentucky. The kind of weather that John Webster is probably enjoying in Maryland. Of course, he's a masochist for hot weather. John, how you doing?
Hey Gary, I am doing great, man. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Daily Deuce. Everything is going extremely well. We had another busy week in sports, and to address what you said about the heat, Gary, we did have 100 degrees today. I was in my car, and for about 10 minutes, I was riding down the road and had the windows up and no air conditioner on.
Like I said, you are a masochist, and here you are wearing a hoodie on top of that.
Hey man, I get cold, man. I get cold real easy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. If you went outside, I was going to wonder if you were like, Gen Z or something.
Well,
Because
you know what? To be honest with you, even when I go outside, I always have a jacket on. So I've had this hoodie on all day today.
mm,
So,
mm, mm.
you know,
All right. Well, let's get into it. Before we went on air, the Baltimore Orioles, they've been somewhat busy ahead of the trade deadline on the 31st. Or is it? I think it's. Or is it August 1st, John? You can
July
clarify that.
31st, this Thursday.
Okay. So let's see. Sir Anthony Dominguez goes to the Blue Jays, I think, for a prospect. Um, Soto got traded last week to the San Diego Padres, and actually, I think he contributed to a comeback victory over the Phillies. And
Well, Soto, he went out west, but he went to the Giants.
oh, it
No,
was the
I'm
Giants.
sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Take that back. Soto went to the Mets.
That's Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Soto went to the Met. Wait a minute. Are we talking? We're talking about Juan Soto or Greg Soto?
Greg Soto.
He went to the. So they've got two Sotos.
Yes, because he
Okay.
came in the game Sunday, seventh inning as a setup, three up, three down, and looked beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Came in the game last night, had a throwing error, led to the
That's
game
right.
being tied up, and have a walk off for the other team.
That's right. Okay.
So
That's what it is.
with Soto, in my opinion, you don't know what you're going to get. Um, he used to be a closer when he first came in the league. He's with the Detroit Tigers many years ago, and I sometimes wonder about his control. He has great stuff, great velocity, but he doesn't have a lot of control sometimes. And you're going to either get him on this end of the spectrum or you're going to get him on this end of the spectrum. So it's never going to be consistent. He went to the Mets. The Orioles got two prospects for him, two pitchers, one I think one young and one been in the minors for a while. And then, of course, the Orioles made a move in between their doubleheader, and they traded Sir Anthony Dominguez to the Toronto Blue Jays. So Dominguez didn't have too far to go because the Blue Jays are playing the Orioles. All he had to do was switch locker rooms today. So that's pretty much what's happening right now. They also have gotten rid of they traded Brian Baker, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. He went to Tampa Bay. Um, Another piece to the puzzle, they lost another pitcher. Felix Bautista is on 15-day injured list. Shoulder stiffness, which that never sounds good. So we'll see how that's going to work as well too. With the Orioles, Gary, there's still talk about Mullins being traded. Still talk about Ryan O'Hearn being traded, Ramon Laureano being traded. Those are expiring contracts. Zach Eflin is an expiring contract. Charlie Morton is an expiring contract. Um, as I said last week, you go ahead and sell. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're 8 games back, but there's 7 teams ahead of them. You're not gonna pogo stick over top of 7 teams and hop over all 7. You may hop over 3 or 4, but not all 7. Um, I think they have a good nucleus, but the pitching, the pitching, the pitching, the pitching. You know, they had an interesting factor that I know some people are saying, stop crying about the Orioles because They've had their lineup together most of the season. They just aren't a good team. They're overrated and everything like that. Interesting spot today. Jordan Westberg, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rushman, Jackson Holliday, Cedric Mullins, Colton Cowser, Tyler O'Neill. That's what, 7 players?
Yeah.
You know how many times they've had all those 7 players together this year?
0.
Close. 8.
8?
8.
I thought that was one of those things where, yeah, it was like, in fact, I heard him talking about it, and maybe I misheard it. Clearly, I misheard it, but I thought they said that they hadn't had any games together, but like I said, maybe I just misunderstood
And
that.
probably at the point you heard it, it was true. But over the last week or two, all of them have been back and playing together. But that, and then throwing the fact that you had 9 to 10 pitchers on the injured list. You still don't have Kyle Bradis. You still don't have Grayson Rodriguez. You still don't have Tyler Wells. What else didn't you have? Keegan Aiken went on the injury reserve for a while this year. So that's 4 right there. Andrew Kitcher started the season off on the injury reserve. So you've had some problems this year. It's a lot. I know there'll be some watching the show saying, John, stop belly aching, stop crying. And, the Orioles are the Orioles. They've had a rough year. I accept that. They're not going to the playoffs, but I'm looking for them next year. But they have to find some pitching. You may have to make a trade that you don't want to make, and I talked to you about that before, Gary. In order to get that pitcher, you may have to get rid of a couple of assets. And you also have to start thinking out of the organization as well. All these everyday players who are assets, will you be able to sign all of them? Will you be able to keep them? And if not, do you think about trading them in order to get something for them as opposed to having them just walk down the road and you get little or nothing for them? It's things they got to think about. A couple years from now, you're going to be looking at Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rushman a couple years, and they'll be free agents. What are you going to do? A couple years after that, Jackson Holliday will be a free agent. What are you going to do? Jordan Westberg will be a free agent. What are you going to do? The Orioles are a small market team. They don't have the money like the Yankees and the Dodgers to sign all of them back. You're going to have to be strategic and think about what you're going to do to move your team forward.
Yeah. Well, John, I really like how you've broken that down. To answer let me ask you a question instead. If you're the Orioles, looking at the rest of this season, the trades that you make, are you looking to build for the future, or are you looking to try to make this team not competitive, but or not competitive for postseason, but to finish the season on a high note and try to carry that momentum and hopefully stay healthy going into next season? You talk about building blocks, but is this the kind of thing where you're trying to unload some contracts on the one hand, but are you also trying to do something to try to salvage really what has been a disappointing season, to say the least, and try to put the best face forward going into 2026?
I think you're definitely building for next season. It's not a rebuild. It's a reorganization to get them ready for next year. I think they can still be very competitive. For this season, I would like to see them be 81-81. I've said that the whole time. But the other thing you got to do right now, Gary, you got to let some of these kids play, because you got to find out what they can do. You got to find out what Kobe Mayo can do at first base. You got to find out what Hurstead can do. Hurstead has been up here, and but he hasn't played consistently. They haven't had him out there all the time. I'm not sure what he can and can't do. But you got a kid, Dylan Beavers, in the minor league system that's ready to come up. You got Enrique Bradfield, a very good center fielder, but he's not Cedric Mullins. He's ready to come up as well too. You got to figure these things out. With Kobe Mayo over first base, you need to keep playing him. I know Ryan Mountcastle is getting ready to come off the injury reserve. He'll probably come off when the Orioles play the Phillies. But you need to play Mayo. You need to play Mayo, see what he can do. And oh, by the way, if I were the Orioles, I would trade Mountcastle because you could get something for him. That's just me. I know, Gary, we're running out of time in this segment, so I don't want to keep belaboring the point. We'll just say go O's.
All right. Fair enough. So, John, as camps start or fall camps start in college football, we always go to that discussion, who can beat the defending champion? In this case, my Ohio State Buckeyes, winners of a college football playoff, the 12-team playoff, who essentially ran the table after an embarrassing home rivalry loss to Michigan. They're not quite the same team personnel-wise, but the way college football is, especially with this with this $1 billion settlement between the schools where they have to pay the players directly, or where they can pay players directly, and you have to divvy up $21 million. And oh yeah, NIL, and oh yeah, the transfer portal. So, John, do we have a new champion this year, in your opinion, or is Ohio State the kind of team that can weather that storm? And how do you see it right now, especially, with the Wild Wild West going on financially and everything else? We have to recruit a whole new roster every year.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's that last part, that Wild Wild West, that's a whole story and a whole nother day with a whole episode all to itself. Mm-hmm. This year, from what I've seen so far, the teams you're looking at is Texas and Penn State to be up there. That as far as top, Georgia's going to be there. I see Ohio State up there. But I'm going to tell you this about Ohio State. He won his national championship. Mm-hmm. But I think what's bigger for him, Ryan Day, at Ohio State, is to beat Michigan. I think right now, this sounds crazy, Gary, and you and I have talked about it. You have people there at Ohio State, even though he won a national championship, are still mad at him because he hadn't beat Michigan in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah,
and that sounds crazy, but I think you would agree it's unbelievable. But I'm not sure they're in the preseason top 10. I'm not sure they will be in the mix. Notre Dame's in the preseason top 10 at 6. We'll see. Yeah. I also saw LSU, but you already know my thoughts of LSU and Mr. Coach Kelly. I don't think they will stay in the top 10. I'm not sure. I'll leave it at that. I don't, Yeah. Alabama's going to be very interesting. It's supposed to be a bounce back year for Coach DeBoer. We'll see. They start the season off going to Tallahassee. They play Florida State. You'll get a good idea how they're going to be from that game. Dabo Swinney, he's trying to have a bounce back year. They made the tournament last year. I think they lost in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. In the
ACC really took a hit that first round.
Yeah, so I think Dabo's going to try to come back. The interesting thing that you're going to see in college football this year, and it's really not even going to be about them in the playoff. It's really not even going to be about them being in the top 10 or top 20. But who they're going to follow? In the ACC, the one and only Bill Belichick. Either you like him or you hate him. Doesn't matter which one, you're still going to follow him. Yeah. And we'll see how North Carolina does. He had an interesting statement last week. They said, Coach Belichick, how's your team going to do? He said, I don't know. And the reason he does not know, he still was getting transfers in the spring. This whole situation now with players leaving and coming, and it's just totally out of control, Gary. We'll just have to see what's going to happen. Notre Dame, like I said, they are a top team, but they got to find a quarterback. Freeman is a very good coach, excellent coach. We'll see how they do. I'm really not sure they'll make it back to the tournament again this year, but I still think they'll be a good team. I think they'll have my take right now. I think they're going to have 9 or 10 wins. I need to look at that schedule a little bit more closer, but that's my take. I think they'll have 9 or 10 wins this season, maybe more. But that whole thing with this NCAA and I'll play for you today, you pay me tomorrow mentality. Uh,
Yeah.
that's me, Gary.
Well, John, I'll make 2 quick points before we move on. Okay, what you mentioned about Bill Belichick, I think that will be the most watched story in college football this season because of his success at the NFL and him. And I don't want to say coming down a level, but let's face it, North Carolina is not the New England Patriots, it's not the NFL, and how he adapts to that, as you said, with players still coming in, adjusting to things much differently with young men as opposed to older men. And we also, before we move on, also have to look at a team, look at Deion Sanders. First of all, thank goodness he is healthy again. He announced that he had had surgery for bladder cancer. He'd been treated this spring, and he's back. Prayers for him and his recovery because he has been through a lot these last few years. But I think he's also his team, the Colorado Buffaloes. They're also worth watching to see how they move on from Shedeur Sanders and oh my gosh, the Heisman Trophy winner, who's
Travis Hunter.
What's that? Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter.
Man, okay, thank you. It's like I was just having brain lock. That will be interesting, especially in the Big 12. And I guess that's all I have to say about that.
Well, you bring up two very good points. Now we keep it moving and go on to our next segment. What we got here, Gary?
All right, WNBA.
Woo!
All right, let's see. Okay, they're now in their home stretch after an all-star game that, depending on your perspective, was either a blowout, not worth watching, or maybe because it got tight near the end, a compelling game. But the story really within that were the T-shirts that they wore that said "Pay us what you owe us" as a statement to the league. They're in the midst of CBA, collective bargaining negotiations for a new contract. The questions loom about whether there'll be a lockout, and there are questions also whether they might be like overplaying their hand in this, with this solidarity, especially for a league that has lost. I think it's any estimates have ranged between $30 to $40 million per season, and really has never really turned a profit. My take on it is, even with that, a lot of the losses, of course, are underwritten by their NBA counterparts, that sustain the league. But their values, individual team values, even with losing money, they grow every year. So there is value. You also have to consider the league announced recently that they're going to expand to two, three. I think it's like at least 2 cities, maybe 3 or 4 in the next 3 to 5 years. I think Philadelphia and Detroit are the 2 franchises coming in the next 2 years. So if you're talking about expanding, especially in major markets, then yeah, I think that does say something about the league's growth and appeal, which I think was coming with or without Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark did ratchet it up a bit in terms of drawing more new viewers. Maybe not now since she's not playing, but just the fact that she's there still puts butts in the seats. A lot of those tickets were sold out, and I think they're still going to draw even to watch her coach. And who knows whether she comes back from injury this season. But I do think the WNBA, they've got to be very, very careful. And I'm talking about the league, because I don't think that you can pay them anything close to what the NBA pays its players. But I think you do have to get those salaries to a level, get to a level where six figures is probably the floor, and the minimum, and go from there, because all the stories that we hear year after year about players having to go overseas and play to really make money and stuff, and of course a lot of the players really make their money from endorsements. We could talk about Asia Wilson and Angel Reese, and of course Caitlin Clark, but the league has to figure out a way to really pay a decent scale without really trying to put themselves in a deeper hole. And I really don't know how they can do that. Again, they have a product that people are curious about. They have to figure out how to market themselves. That's one I'm not going to get deep into the weeds on, because it's a very, very complicated subject that we don't have enough time here for. So I'll leave it at that. Your take.
I think the WNBA. Well, first, Gary, as always, great take on your part. I think the WNBA is in a very tenuous situation. The league, and the players, and the owners. I think there has to be a negotiation. I think the players are very much underpaid. But I think that the negotiation has to be one where you find a settlement without going to a lockout. Why do I say that? Normally, when you have a lockout, you can put pressure on owners to come to the table to get things worked out.
Or the players,
Yeah,
as we've
these
seen in the NFL.
these players deserve their money. They deserve to be paid. But it's tricky because if they go on a lockout, I'm not sure, or a strike, however you want to look at it, I'm not sure you can keep enough momentum where you'll get the same people back again. What do I mean? The league as a whole loses money each year. So if the owners can sit back and say, okay, you want to strike, we ain't got to pay you. And the other side of that equation is, because of the viewership that is not where it needs to be, the ratings and the money, the players are going to lose out. And there's a lot of things these players have done. They deserve to be paid. Definitely deserve to be paid more than what they're getting now. But I think it's very important that they get everybody to this table and have a negotiation before it is a lockout, because I think the lockout will hurt the players and the league. I don't think it will serve the purpose of what normally a lockout does, when you have viewers, clamoring for the sport to come back, like football. Like baseball went on a strike, and it took them a long time because you missed the World
Several.
Series.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
I don't
really
think it
did.
came back until you had McGuire and Sosa on that home run chase.
Mhm.
And with that long for baseball, I think it'll be even longer for the WNBA. I think there needs to be good negotiations, meaningful negotiations, where both sides are sitting down and they need to resolve this without a strike or a lockout. I think a
Yeah.
strike and a lockout hurts everyone.
Indeed, John. Both sides need to be realistic about what they want, and what they think they can get, because again, to your point, which I agree with. Yeah, they do need more money. But the league has to really think about the fact that its franchises, they lose money individually, even though their value goes up. There's still that whole loss leader thing. That has to be written off, and it's a delicate balancing act for them. I do think that they will avoid a lockout for the reasons that you mentioned, because again, anytime you have any kind of work stoppage, and believe it or not, the NFL is mindful of this as well. When they had two strikes that lasted substantially, there was one in both cases, there were people that just said, okay, we're going to find something else to watch on Sunday. As much as popular as the NFL is in this country, people will find something else. If you have a league that has struggled to draw viewership, that is considered a niche sport, and then you go away because of a labor dispute for any length of time, those people really aren't coming back. And I can pick. I'll say it like this: going to another sport where the saying, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And here in Kentucky, years ago, when they finally got a NASCAR race here, this was before I moved here, but that race was a disaster because the race was getting ready to start, and several of its drivers were caught in traffic out on Interstate 71. A lot of fans didn't make it in until halfway through the race, and there was finger pointing all over the place, but it left a bad impression. So then I moved here a year later, um, and the next NASCAR race, there were probably more media than fans in the stands. I mean, it was just bad, but they never got those fans back, and now they're not even on the schedule because, again, you have just one chance to make a first impression. If you're the WNBA, you have to look at it as we're in a good spot right now. We're drawing eyeballs. We've got a good product, always have had a good product, but we're drawing eyeballs and we're getting ratings, and we've got a national TV contract, and we've got exposure on several channels that we never had. You can't afford to take that off and and play chicken over a labor dispute. You got to get to the table. Players, you have to understand, they're going to pay you. They're going to pay you money that they feel like they can pay you. I think they are going to pay them what they're worth. It might not be as high. I think a lot of it has to do with other revenues, and not just salary, but both sides have to be very, very realistic and look at the big picture of where they are, where they want to be, and what they can afford to lose.
Totally agree, Gary. Very good points. Totally agree.
Yeah. So, John, it's been another great discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we're moving a little bit deeper. Probably by the next time we talk, we'll have at least one preseason playoff game. We can look a little bit closer to the start of NFL season, a little bit closer to college football season. But in the meantime, let's see, there's tennis, there's soccer or
Mm-hmm.
football, excuse me. Let's see, what else have we got? Of course, we mentioned the WNBA. I'm even watching a little bit of the basketball tournament and some of the 3-on-3, just because it's something to watch. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
John, like I said, our national pastime, baseball. And let's see where your Baltimore Orioles and my Nationals end up, or who ends up leaving and who ends up coming in.
Gary, man, another great week in sports. Hey, as always, what we tell you all, watch some basketball, watch some baseball, watch some football, watch some soccer, watch some tennis. But above all else,
Watch
watch
it.
some sports and come back and see us real soon. Take care.